Israeli government, in collaboration with Israeli Defense Force, has flouted time and time again various UN resolutions. So pretty much what it boils down to is the Strauss Group, which owns Sabra Trading Company products, including the hummus to go products that you find at Jasmine's and Tulip. They give part of their profits to the Golani Brigade, which is a faction of the Israeli Defense Force. So it goes towards perpetuating and propagating this occupation that's been going on since '67, and some people have been arguing for a lot longer. So this is not a drastic resolution. What I'm resolving to do is just to give students the option of buying another hummus product. So just to have something else on the shelf alongside Sabra hummus, another chickpea derivative, another hummus brand, that'll let students not have to support this cause if it violates, their, whatever for more ethical reasons, by instead buying an alternative hummus brand. So it's not very drastic, and actually I've talked to John about it. He's talked to the Stexa rep on campus, and he's talked to the VP of Business Affairs, and they said it's completely feasible, and there is another hummus brand being offered at the Nest that they would just expand its availability in the same places that Sabra is offered, so that it's just as accessible and just as there for students to purchase if they would like. So I'll take any questions.
All right. Seeing no questions, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Their motion on the floor is to approve Resolution Sabra, and it has been seconded. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving Resolution Sabra, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Are there any abstentions? All right. Resolution Sabra has passed. That was first reading. All right. I'm sorry about that, by the way. We'll now move on to letter 1 presented by Senator Mick.
All right, so just a lot of what Dee was talking about earlier. I just wanted to say that, as for me personally, I'm pretty proud of what I've done as a senator this year. Chick-fil-A resolution most recently. I helped share on the Sabra resolution. I revised the bylaws for SOB to make it easier for student organizations to maintain their status as RSOs or to pick up abandoned RSOs. I'm on my school's diversity committee. I helped host 2 successful cadaver balls. I'm satisfied. But let me tell you this, I was never more proud to be a senator, to be a member of SGA than I was last week when the Student Senate stood up and said that we believe the Kent students have the right to vote. I know that people are going to say that we wasted our time doing that, or there are more important things before Senate, or that the student body hates us because of internal SGA affairs. But here's the facts. Me personally, I think that the student body would hate us more for not taking action to make sure that disenfranchised students get to vote than for spending the amount of time necessary to address the issue properly. I'm an idealist, but that's me. Moving on to this actual letter, I really didn't want to have to submit this. It's hard for me because I personally like a lot of the members of the court, and unfortunately this isn't a matter of personal preference here, this is a matter of conscience. You can read the letter to see the constitutional citations and everything. I'll keep it as brief as possible. The point is, we all know at this point that Kent couldn't vote. The alternative proposed was unconstitutional because it was not in secret. And a lot of the students who were offered, who would have been offered this unconstitutional method of voting couldn't even find out about it because of the email problems. So all that went down, and I have every belief that the court did the best they could on all that. That's not the issue there. It was a time crunch. It was unfortunate. They tried, and I'm happy with that, even if it wasn't perfectly constitutional. My issue comes in what happened afterwards. There was actually a petition put forward that in part addressed the lack of the ability of the Kent students to vote to the court, a case under the election laws, and by 6.4.4 of the Constitution, the Supreme Court shall, which is the imperative in the Constitution, hear every single case put forth under the election rules. They chose not to hear it. And the court's probably going to get up here and say that they reviewed it and they didn't find any merits to it. But the fact is, Chapter 7 of the bylaws lays down exactly what it means to hear a case. Both sides have to be able to get up and present evidence. There has to be the discovery period. The justice has to discuss it before people even get into the debate. I mean, there's a whole detailed process, even on the Supreme Court website, and they didn't do it because they just wanted to stick to the status quo that said, hey, the elections are over, we're going to stick to it. On that note, the Senate came in, and via Laura's suggestion that Dean Martis picked up later on, actually, we decided the best thing to do, we didn't want to upset the entire process, rehost the whole elections, which is what the Supreme Court was trying to avoid, and I agree with them, that would be a disaster. What we wanted to do was let the Kent students just vote. Add the totals in. It probably wouldn't change the first election, it might change the second election, we don't know. But the fact is that the SGA Constitution says that the elections have to be open to all students, and they weren't. As for me personally, I had spring break last week, and I went home and I was telling my parents about all this, and they thought the whole thing sounded particularly absurd. And to any outsider, it definitely would. What, 100 students couldn't vote and nothing was done to make them constitutionally vote? And when the Senate passed a resolution trying to let them vote, the Supreme Court refused to act on it. And because of that, Student Affairs didn't post the elections, and all of our work was for naught. That sounds pretty ridiculous to me. And I'm going to assume that after all the debate we put into this last time, after the great testimony we had from so many senators, from Sarah Kaya, from Kate Dennis, from everyone, that it sounds pretty absurd to you all too, that even after the Senate constitutionally passed a resolution, because it does say in 6.3, I think, I'd have to look at my notes, that the Senate does set down the dates for the elections. We did that, and the court refused to hold them. I don't want to impeach the court. I emailed Dean Martis repeatedly, I emailed the court, I talked to everyone, I tried to fix this. I spent a lot of time on this in the last 2 weeks, actually the last 4 weeks for that matter. And it's time, like Deep said, I would have rather spent on other resolutions and other points, things that would better help my constituents than this. But as for me personally, I'm not just a senator from the medical school, I'm a senator at the University of Louisville. And the student body doesn't trust student government. But I think the best thing we can do to help put that trust back into them is to make sure that we are truly a government of the people. And the only way that's going to happen is if the Kent school that was disenfranchised not once, but twice, is able to vote. And I know what people are going to say. People are going to say, oh, impeaching the court is a drastic measure. Well, I've tried everything else. I'm out of options. We're out of options, and we're running out of time. If we care about the Kent students voting, we've got to act on this. Not only that, I know people are also going to say we should spend the time elsewhere. I've addressed that. The court, in their advisory order, I don't know how many of you all heard about this. They posted an advisory order. It was per curiam, so we...
5 minutes. You're at 5 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. I'm almost done. The per curiam advisory order that said that essentially everything we did was irrelevant and the court had certified the results. Well, just a couple more things. First of all, the Constitution makes no makes no allowances for things like advisory orders. The court is supposed to interpret the Constitution in the manner of hearing a case. There was no case about the Senate's resolution, therefore their ruling was extra constitutional. On top of that, the Supreme Court said that they acted constitutionally throughout the entire election cycle, which we've established they haven't. And finally, they said that because everything was certified, which is yet again, it's not a constitutional term, it was over. So, because I've already taken 5 minutes, I'm going to end this and let everyone else speak at this point. But the fact is, if we as an SGA want to have any respect for the rest of this year, or want to have any respect next year, we've got to make sure that we are truly a government of the people. And very rarely does student government get the opportunity to act on something of this magnitude, something that directly affects students this much. Because there is nothing more important to our students than making sure that they're enfranchised. Because without that, we're a mock body. We mean nothing. All I'm asking you all to do is try and help make sure that happens. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any... Go ahead, Kelsey.
I just want to say that I talked with the BSW students, the 100 students that were disenfranchised. Not all of them, obviously, but some of them. I went ahead and took the initiative just because I don't know. I mean, I have my opinions about it. They're words. Fuck it. Just leave it alone. They're not really concerned. We're pretty non-traditional as far as the school goes. Not very many people are too worried about voting. Not many people are even the people that were worried about voting when they realized that, you know, it didn't work or whatever else, they were just like, all right, well, you know, and just left it alone. So just the fact that the students that this is actually affecting are not too concerned about it, I think that everybody should kind of be aware of that. We can't make them care as much as I would want every single one of my constituents to vote. As much as I made sure that I got to vote and followed whatever procedures, I can't make them care. You guys can't make them care. So just for everybody to be aware of that, that's kind of the perspective of 40 of the 100 students. Just want to throw that out there.
Thank you. We're gonna go here, then Linda, and then Kate. Okay? Your name, I'm sorry.
Zach.
Zach.
I would say that simply because the students don't care doesn't mean that we should further disenfranchise them. I know there's a similar feeling in the med school that we don't really care what goes on here, and I think that's kind of and they play off each other. So the least we can do is make sure that, hey, if you decide to care in future years, that the rules are in place so that you'll be able to do so.
Okay, Linda?
Yeah, I think for me at this point the issue is not whether the students are indifferent, because I think the problem is that the indifference results from the fact that this has gone on way too long and we're trying to change something within the system. We're not trying to make people care at this point, because when systems become so difficult to work within, people stop caring. And I think that's the problem. I think the indifference is the result of having a system that is faulty for whatever reason. So I think what we're trying to do is to create a system that is constitutional, and we're trying to change that now. We're not trying to, at this point, to me, the Kent vote is just, that is a symptom of the disease, and we're trying to root out the disease. That's the way I see it. So that actually, to me, the fact that the Kent students are saying, fuck it at this point, to me seems to be a good reason why we should do something.
Thank you. Kate?
Well, basically my words are just reiterations of what Zach and Lita said. I think that the two are mutually exclusive, are not mutually exclusive. And I wish that some of my constituents cared more, but the point now is a little bit beyond that election. I mean, who knows what would have happened, but it's in the past. But the fact that this kind of disregard is perpetuated is really frustrating, especially coming from a school that is non-traditional. The students there don't identify with the larger student body or the university, and I just, I don't know, it's just kind of frustrating, so.
Kyle?
I'd like to yield my time on the floor to one of my constituents to speak.
Go ahead.
First, I'd like to say that I'm only speaking in the capacity of Max Moore, a student at the University of Louisville in the School of Arts and Science. Everything we've talked about so far in reference to this letter have been supporting details of the letter, because the main thing of the letter is that we're trying to impeach the court, and I think that's what we need to focus on with this discussion. That being said, we're talking about impeachment here, and that doesn't need to be taken lightly. This is impeachment. This is removal of all these people from office. And looking over the list of the people...
Parliamentary inquiry. What is impeachment?
Impeachment is not removal of office.
Thank you for correcting me here.
And don't do that again. I have to call on you.
That's an interrupt. I'm allowed to interrupt.
You're allowed to interrupt for a motion.
That was a motion. That is in order.
Okay.
I can show it.
I got you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Reading over the list of people that are being suggested to be impeached here, we have Chief Justice Fromeyer and Associate Justices Shepard, Bennett, Howarth, Blaney, and McMillan. I agree completely with the last one that Associate Justice Libby McMillan has not been to any court functions within the past few months. He does need to be impeached, but I'd also like to say that Libby McMillan has not been on the court in months. So this says to me that if they can't even decide who they're wanting to impeach and who needs to be impeached, and like I said, impeachment, one of the most serious charges that we can bring to someone elected to or appointed to an SGA position. If the research is lacking in even who they need to impeach and who needs to be responsible for this, and we're blaming innocent students at this point who aren't even involved in SGA, then we need to take a lot closer look at what we're trying to do here as this Senate body.
Thank you. Laura? what's your name?
I didn't have it.
I'm sorry. Sarah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm tend to be a really cynical person, but sometimes I get